Hi, I'm Millie Copper, writer of cozy apocalyptic fiction and practical preparedness manuals. I live in rural Wyoming with my husband, son, a dog, a cat, and about 20 chickens who have taken the winter off from laying eggs. Hopefully, with the longer daylight, they're going to start producing eggs soon because I am ready for some fresh eggs. I also have 4 adult daughters, 3 son-in-laws with one pending, 6 grandchildren, and one on the way. Yes, one pending son-in-law means we are deep in wedding planning. It's going to be fabulous, but it is a lot of work to plan a wedding. Tell me, have you ever planned a wedding? Do you know what I'm talking about? Books have been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I learned to read at a young age and found myself getting lost in the stories. I'm the type who would stay up all night reading under the covers with the flashlight, even after being yelled at several times by my parents to shut the light off and go to sleep. I guess I was a troublemaker. That love of reading fueled my imagination, and it wasn't long until I was writing my own stories. Some of my earliest writing memories involve sneaking off with my mom's brand new scrapbook. The brown paper, much like that of a paper sack, fascinated me. I don't know that I understood that she meant to fill the book with photographs, but I loved writing in it. She wasn't too happy when she found out what I'd been doing, but at least I hadn't even filled a whole page with my pencil scribbles. Even at a young age, I was apparently prone to writer's block. This channel will be primarily dedicated to sharing the audio versions of my books along with occasional updates. My plan is to have a new video for you each Friday, beginning with this one. Hopefully, I'll be able to stick with that plan and deliver exactly what I'm telling you I'm going to. We'll see. So we'll start with my brand new series, Lights of the Collapse. This series is one I started working on back in 2019. It started, like most of my ideas do, with just a little rough thought in my head. And then I started writing some ideas down on paper or in my phone. I love to write on my phone because it seems my best ideas come to me when we're driving, when my husband's driving and I'm in the passenger seat. So my phone becomes my notepad. So from those first early ideas, I then put down a couple of chapters thinking, oh, this book's coming together quickly. Then 2020 came along and everything changed. Even though this isn't a story about a pandemic, there were so many similarities that I really just needed to put the book aside until things calmed down a little bit. So with a name like Lights of the Collapse, it sounds more like a sci-fi book, I think, than a post-apoc book. But I promise you, this is apocalyptic fiction. There's no aliens, there's no spaceships, nothing like that. And even though I said I had to put it aside during the pandemic because of the similarities, it's not a pandemic story either. Not really, anyway. And while I say it isn't science fiction, it does have a sci-fi element to it. The scary part is that the disaster in this series could happen with the science we have today. The first book, Starborn, a short story prequel, will be live in both ebook and audio on March 28th. Starborn is a Readers Club exclusive, which means that the full book is available only to those who belong to my newsletter. I'll have the first chapter on my public channel, but to listen to the rest of it, you'll need to join my Readers Club and you'll be given an exclusive link to be able to hear the entire book, or you can grab the ebook version from a link that I'll send out to my Readers Club on the day that it goes live. I'll drop a link below so you can join my Readers Club and have that all set so you get the full version on the day that it goes live. Book 1, The Lesser Light, goes live on April 11th, and that'll be available in ebook, paperback, and the full version will be on YouTube. The Greater Light, Book 2, comes out in all formats on May 11th, and Tally the Stars on June 6th. Books 1, 2, and 3 will be available on the public YouTube channel in their entirety for your listening pleasure. On the weeks there isn't a new release, I'll have a trailer or a sample chapter or even a video, something like this. After book 3 of Lights of the Collapse, I'll start working through my backlist, beginning with my best-selling Havoc in Wyoming series. With over 30 published fiction books, I'll have many hours of streaming available for you. Plus, I'll add in trailers, bonus stories, and even chit-chat videos like this one on occasion, especially when I'm introducing a new series. In addition to my fiction books, some of my nonfiction books may also make it to this channel, especially the ones that are preparedness focused. I'm still sorting out the logistics and practicality of putting books that have recipes in them in audio, but I'd really love to share some of those with you. Books like my popular Sourdough for Your Food Storage are passion projects for me, and I'd truly love to be able to share the simplicity of sourdough with everyone. If sourdough is something that interests you too, drop a comment and let me know. I'd love to hear who else is out there making breads and cakes and pies and everything else with your sourdough starter. I have another question for you. If you have a sourdough starter, did you name your starter? I started my starter in 2009, and can you believe it doesn't have a name? I know that that's a popular thing to do, but I guess I'm just not that creative with naming inanimate objects. Okay, truth is, even my cat doesn't have a name. We just call her Cat. How sad is that? At a live event that I attended recently, a gentleman asked me what qualified me to write apocalyptic stories and preparedness manuals. It's a valid question. My husband and I first became interested in preparedness after the Great Coastal Gale of 2007. In early December, a series of 3 Pacific storms struck the Oregon and Washington coast. These storms brought heavy rains, temperature changes, and tremendous winds. Hurricane force winds. We lived on the edge of a forest and many of the trees were knocked over. We were stuck where we were until the wind stopped and the chainsaws could come out to even let anybody out of the neighborhood. The storm started on a Sunday with the power going out while we were in church, and we were without electricity until the following Saturday. Some areas of the county were without power for even longer than that. After the winds died down, then the cleanup really began. The town we lived near looked like a war zone, with the wind having taken off roofs and taken glass paned windows out of buildings. Without power, the gas stations weren't working and the grocery stores could only accept cash, and that's if they were even open. The storm left behind months of cleanup. Complicating the efforts was a mudslide on Highway 30, which closed that road. All of the trucks coming in to resupply us had to go the long way around, which added to the difficulties of things returning to normal. That storm brought about many changes for my family. While we were fine with the power outage, we were reading books at night by candlelight, and we were able to cook on a camp stove. It really opened up our eyes to just how fragile our power system was and how easy things could change in a heartbeat. One of the small communities near us even lost their water source. While we didn't have any difficulties with not having water, everything kept flowing. Had we not been able to turn on the faucet for water, we didn't have any stored water, so we wouldn't have had any available to us until we were able to get out of the community and into town to buy some, if we could even find any to buy. Truly, this was such an eye-opening event that it really changed how I looked at everything from that point on. And it sent me onto the internet and down rabbit holes of searches, trying to just learn more about preparedness and what people did in long-term power outages. That probably was a big start to my fascination with post-apocalyptic and dystopian books too. Learning how others were surviving, even if it was in a fiction format, really gave me a lot of ideas about what we could do in our real life. My research changed things so much for us that we soon started buying extra things in bulk, storing water, making sure we had multiple ways to cook, and a whole host of other things. Eventually, we moved from Oregon to Wyoming, and that brought on all new adventures. Our first place in Wyoming, we had a 2-acre parcel outside of town, and we started with a small chicken coop, I think 6 chickens, just for eggs. That quickly grew. You know, have you heard the saying about chickens, how they're like potato chips? You can't have just one. Well, we started with 6. I think it was the next year we began raising chickens in chicken tractors for meat, and not only for ourselves, but for other people. I would take orders from people and they would come and pick up their meat birds too when they were ready for processing. From the chickens, we moved on to goats for both milk and meat. And then from our 2-acre parcel, we moved to a different location in Wyoming and now live on 20 acres. Around the time that we decided to establish our new 20-acre homestead, my husband also took a permaculture class, and he's certified in permaculture, which has been a really great thing for helping us to set things up in a logical manner. We now attempt, because we're on the high desert of Wyoming, to have a food forest with different fruit trees and nuts and Siberian peas, which are great not only for humans, but also for chickens. We no longer have goats, but we do still have the chickens, and we try to garden each year. And again, not always easy on the high desert of Wyoming, but it's still an effort that we like. We harvest our own water. Our house has several water containers. With the size of roof that we have, if we get an inch of water for over an hour or so, we'll end up filling up our 2 300-gallon containers that are attached to the house. Just with an inch of rain, it'll work out pretty good. So that's the water that we use for the garden, and we also use it for the chickens. It could also be used for drinking water too, but we do have a well that we use for the drinking water. The well fills up a 2,000-gallon cistern, so we always have excess water on hand. I think that Great Coastal Gale and the town being without water really has made me a little bit water paranoid. When we first moved up to our 20-acre property, our house was completely unfinished. It didn't have much. It had the outside walls, it had windows, and it had the door. We had to do the entire inside. So we didn't have a finished kitchen. We weren't even on the electrical grid. We had a small solar system, just enough to allow the computer, because I worked from home. So just enough for the computer. Most of the time we could run lights, one or two at night, but sometimes on days that didn't have a lot of sunshine, we didn't have enough power from the system to be able to run lights at night. So we had the oil lamps and individual solar lights that we used. Since we didn't have a finished kitchen, most of our cooking during the summer months was done outside. During the winter months was done on top of or inside of the wood stove. So that was quite an adventure. A lot of the things that you'll read in my post-apocalyptic books are things that I actually lived, things that we did when we were living off the grid. That time living off the grid was truly incredible, and I really do draw on that time for a lot of my stories. You'll also find a lot of my passions in the books. The sourdough that I mentioned, I also like talking about sprouting seeds or legumes. Those are also great. If you ever find yourself in the apocalypse, that's something you should probably want to do. I also talk about our outdoor activities. We hunt, we fish, we hike, we paddleboard, do some trail running. All of those things seem to make their way into my stories. My books don't contain any profanity. They don't have sex scenes, and I try not to be overly descriptive of the death scenes. People do die, and it does get gritty, and the books deal with adult themes. Some people can get upset because of what happens, not only what might happen during the apocalypse, but I write about things that happen in today's world too. And that can be difficult for people to read about or to hear about. It does get a little bit gritty during the apocalypse. They also contain conservative Christian values and references to God, Jesus, Christianity, Bible verses, praying, and more. Each of my books is a combination of adventure, survival, and real-world challenges set against an apocalyptic backdrop. You'll see how skills and personal values play a role in each of the stories. You'll also see how my characters navigate through this world, relying on faith to get them through the day. But keep in mind, not everyone in the story is a Christian, and not all Christian paths are a straight walk. Many of the times there are challenges both for the Christians and the non-Christians, and they must figure out how to get past those and out to the other side safely. There are struggles, there are challenges, and not everybody survives. It's not always easy. It's much like our normal day-to-day life. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when I have a new video coming out. Again, that's supposed to be every Friday. YouTube can be enjoyed at no cost to you with only occasional ads. Once I reach a certain number of subscribers, YouTube's very kind and shares a percentage of that ad revenue with me. That will help me to be able to keep putting out videos and sharing my stories in this format. Thanks so much for joining me on this venture. If you'd like to learn more about my stories, please visit milliecopper.com or stick around this channel. See you again soon.